Hello, welcome to The Goddess in Art. Our program is dedicated to the creative power of a tradition over 40,000 years old, the Goddess in Art. My name is Starr Goode. Our guest for this evening program is an artist whose work boldly reclaims the female body as a divine revelation, as a source of spirituality. Cheri Gaulke is a Los Angeles-based performance artist. She is the recipient of a National Endowment for the Arts Individual Artist Fellowship. She co-founded the Sisters of Survival, which is an anti-nuclear performance group. Lecturer, curator, and teacher, she recently completed a half-hour video, Our Lady of Los Angeles. Thank you for being here, Cheri.
Thank you for inviting me.
Cheri, for me, your work revolves around the issues of spirituality, around sexuality. In two of your performance pieces, This Is My Body, Revelations of the Flesh, you used your body, a female body, and you set it against a backdrop, a tableau of really patriarchal images and myths, particularly Christian. And the results were images that were very strong, and I mean, not only showing the suppression of women, but also the suppression of an earlier religion based not on God our Father, but the goddess, the Great Mother. Tell us about that.
Well, actually, my background is that my family is 4 generations clergy, so
really?
I'm very embedded in this patriarchal backdrop of Christian images, and grew up very much believing in that tradition and very affected by the symbols. And in about 1982, I really started dealing with that in my work. This Is My Body was kind of a history lesson in a way. It was looking at how Christianity has portrayed the body throughout history, or the flesh, particularly looking at the symbols of the serpent and the tree. Because as I see it, the serpent in the tree, or the serpent in the tree, is an image of paradise. And both of those symbols are associated with the goddess. But what Christianity has done with that image is, through history, it has turned it into the dead Christ hanging on the cross, which is, of course, the life source of the serpent being now the dead flesh, and the cross being a cut-up, dismembered tree. And that's pretty much how I feel about it now.
Also, too, using your body, that not only is it like that the flesh is a symbol of matter, or, you know, reviling matter, but particularly the female embodies that. Particularly, it's the female body who's, you know, the lustful incarnate, and that fear of the sexuality, and in the paternal religions, wanting to control the sexuality, wanting to know the paternity.
Right, yeah, I think what's unfortunate is Christianity really separates, not just Christianity, it's really Western civilization, Western culture, separates the flesh and the spirit, or the matter and the divine. And what I believe, and what I think is the message of the goddess, is that the matter is divine, that they are one and the same. And I think that we really get in trouble as a culture if we think of those as separate. You know, we're supposed to attain the spirit. That's our goal as Christians. And to attain the spirit, you need to lose the flesh. It's only through your death that you will attain the spirit, and this is the ultimate goal. But if you don't believe that there's an inherent divinity in matter, then I think it's sort of the root of all our problems, because how can you love and care for the earth? How can you care for women? How can we really care for each other if we don't see that divinity in each other?
Right, and that female body as an extension of the other, like when you get that split, when you get that dual thinking of like divinity up here and matter down here, then there's an otherness, and it sort of justifies, gives an ethical system of it's okay to exploit this matter, it's okay to treat it in any sort of way at all. So you have like the female body, but by an extension of that, any other, like the nature or...
Exactly, yeah, women have really been sort of the scapegoat. One of the images in This Is My Body is the witch hanging from the gallows. Again, this image of, 9 million women burned or hung as witches during the Middle Ages. I mean, what a a rage and a hatred of the flesh to try and destroy this kind of spirituality, and that was happening then. Revelations of the Flesh I did later, and that piece really kind of escalates the war against the flesh. That the logical end, if you hate the flesh that much, is that you create a weapon to not only destroy it, but to vaporize it. And that's what the nuclear bomb is. And what really concerned me is how many contemporary fundamentalist ministers equate the book of Revelations in the Bible, which is the final apocalypse, the second coming of Christ, in which he comes and the whole world is destroyed and the faithful, get to go to heaven, that they were equating nuclear holocaust with the second coming of Christ and sort of welcoming it, saying, well, this is the inevitable end, and we should be glad when this happens. And again, it worries me. It really worries me.
It's like the last decimal point of this system. It's like the logic of those values taken to the last point.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, even in the titles of your work, "This is my body," that's really, it's a powerful statement. This
Right.
is my body, to even make that statement of the female body, or revelations of the flesh, saying, revelation is a spiritual sort of word, and to put those two together.
Exactly, because what I did in Revelations is I was sort of punning on the revelations in the book of Revelations in the Bible, but also the piece being a revelation of the goddess, because one of the things I did in the performance is I projected an image of the goddess, a video projection 12 feet high above the altar. This was performed in a church, a very large church on Wilshire. And
A Christian church?
Yes,
That's
yeah. In fact, both of the performances were done in churches, and as much as possible I like to do that, because it's a sort of reclaiming of those spiritual sites. In fact, what happened all over Europe is, there were pagan worship sites, ritual places, that when the Christians came, in order to get the pagans to go into their churches, they built the churches right on top of the pagan worship sites. So in a way, I believe that underneath every Christian church is that pagan worship ritual site, which it is, because underneath it is the earth, and that's where we worship.
That's true, and you're really sort of echoing that now, in the sense that I know one of your performance pieces you did on, I think it was Good Friday, and you do them in Christian churches, so you are really bringing that back again.
Yes.
But let's take a look at some of these slides. Well, I know you have some slides of those two pieces
Right.
together. Let's take a look at that.
This is the serpent, which is the life force and associated with the goddess, because the serpent lives in the womb of the mother, the earth. Contrary to popular belief, it's not a phallic symbol. This is me as Eve against a backdrop of a medieval painting. You see the serpent on the right tempting Eve is a woman. The devil is a woman. Right. And here reclaiming that sexual image of the eating of the apple and the sensuality of that. And then towards the end of the performance, when I climb the ladder and take my place on the cross as Christ, and you see the bodies hanging on the cut-up tree. This is an image from Revelations. It's what was projected above the altar. It's the Venus of Willendorf. It's an actual woman as the Venus of Willendorf. She is a 25,000-year-old goddess figure. In the church, I had a preacher on one pulpit who hated the flesh and was, going on and on, ranting and raging about women and what trouble they are. And next to him, on the other pulpit, I had a contemporary feminist witch reciting the crimes against the flesh. I portrayed the flesh, which went through different permutations throughout the piece, here as Lucifer, the beloved angel of God who declared his own divinity and was thrown out and became what we think of as the devil. The devil is actually a Christian invention. Here I am in the middle of turning part flesh and a little bit of Lucifer still in the head. I became a little girl who spilled blood on herself from the altar, the snake, many different manifestations. And finally, the great whore of Babylon, who is really the earth and the material world, who Jesus, in the book of Revelations, will come to the earth to do the final battle with. And finally, the image of a nuclear crucifixion, where I was crucified above the altar as the flesh against a neon atomic symbol, which flashed. And
I think for me, one of the interesting things about performance art is that, well, for one thing, it doesn't have this long patriarchal tradition like some of the other
Right.
art forms, so there's a freedom of it. But also, you're not so concerned like with entertaining the audience, that your work, as well as being art, almost has this healing aspect to it, and you're demanding things of the artists, I mean, you as an artist, of the audience, and for me, your work almost has this redemptive quality about it, and
Yeah.
looking at these pieces.
Yeah, I think it is a very cathartic art form, and you are asking the audience to go through a process with you. And at the same time, there is a lot of concern for the audience. I feel a lot of concern. Some performance artists are accused of being self-indulgent and kind of putting the audience through torture. But I really believe that there needs to be entertainment value. There needs to be humor. And I'm very serious about this stuff, but there's also a lot of humor and irony and different levels to the work that I think are really important to make it accessible to an audience.
Right, because again, being a piece of art, it's also a healing thing for them and for you, and that's, you're incorporating that
Exactly.
in the process you're going through, and it's more than a process, it's a ritual. And I was thinking, being brought up with your father being a minister and stuff, I mean, you really took it to the extreme of a woman being up there as Christ, like you get crucified twice in your pieces. You really take this to an extreme.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually feel like I'm continuing in the tradition of my family of 4 generations clergy. I have a slightly different take on it, but I am up there being the person leading the ritual or entertaining or being the performer, which is what I grew up seeing my dad do, and very much admiring him for speaking from his heart and sharing his spiritual values. And my values are a little different. I mean, in many ways they're similar, but some of the fundamental attitudes had to change because I really, as a woman, I really couldn't stand for a lot of the attitudes towards the female flesh.
Yeah, and I was also thinking too, if you think of Christ's crucifixion, partly it's because he said that he did have the matter right then in the flesh, and they were crucifying him for thinking of himself as divine.
That's right, and that's the rule in this culture, is you can't be divine and in the flesh, and that's what he said that he was, and he was crucified for it. Yeah.
Now you also have, we also have another video that you took of this piece, Revelations in
Right.
the Flesh. Why don't you set that up a little bit for us?
Well, what you will see is part of the goddess imagery that was projected above the altar and the nuclear crucifixion, kind of in juxtaposition with a mushroom cloud video that was used. So we can just go ahead and roll that.
All right, let's see that one.
Also, the music, I should say, behind the goddess imagery is by Hannah, which you also use in your show.
I, who am the beauty of the green earth and the white moon among the stars and the mysteries of the waters, I call upon your soul to arise and come unto me. For I am the soul of nature that gives life to the universe. From me all things proceed, and unto me they must return. Let my worship be in the heart that rejoices, for behold, all acts of love and pleasure are my ritual. Let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you. And you who seek to know me, know that your seeking and yearning will avail you not unless you know the mystery. For that which you seek, you find not within you. I will be with you when you die. Say what you will, we shall never be finished.
Cheri, that last image is one of the most touching, original, striking images of here, like the Great Mother holding still this Pieta figure of the dead earth, how great she is.
Yes, yeah, it's, yeah, I really see the skeleton as sort of the earth, you know, because what that image is really about for me is that we always talk about destroying the planet, but even if we destroy ourselves, that she will live on. The matter will continue in some form. I mean, the universe and the truth of that is so much bigger than we are.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this sort of leads into your next piece, which you don't always go into Christian iconography, you know, that often you just deal with the relationships of nature. Like you did a piece called Leaps of Faith.
Right.
And that was about frogs and your relationship with nature. And I know it was based on, it's an old fairy tale, right?
Right, yeah, actually the piece took place on Leap Year Day in 1984. 1984 is sort of a scary year anyway. And I started with the idea that maybe on Leap Year Day the impossible could happen. It's a sort of special day outside of time. And if I could have anything happen, what would it be? And what it would be is that our consciousness as a culture would change so that we could cope with the situation we find ourselves in, which is on the verge of destroying ourselves.
And of course changing that consciousness means changing our relationship to nature.
Exactly, yeah. So what I did is I created a kind of contemporary public ritual that was also playful and fun. It was at UCLA at a big quad, and I painted on the sidewalks tadpoles turning into frogs, which was a symbol of the kind of transformation. I mean, in fact, in our lifetimes, we've gone through major transformations. I mean, we used to be in the womb, we used to live in this liquid environment, and then now we don't, and it's like amazing. And maybe that's what we need to do again in some strange way. And at the end of the paths were Sisters of Survival, which are the nuns in multicolored habits, which is a group that I co-founded that deals with anti-nuclear performances, and nuns inviting people to leapfrog with them down these paths. In the center of all these paths, in the center of this quad, was this mysterious box that was all decorated with frogs, and it kind of looked like a big circus box with sparkly things on it. And also, I should say, the whole environment was filled with the sound of frogs. So everyone was kind of drawn to this air, what's going on.
So they were really leaping towards some mystery too, leaping into some unknown.
And the leaping being sort of, I mean, there is a kind of religious thing there. I was thinking of people who go to see the Virgin of Guadalupe shrine and they get on their knees and they crawl to the altar. Well, this is sort of like that. It's like a pilgrimage, but it's saying that if we do this together and as a community and as a collective consciousness, that it can be fun. We can help each other along and enjoy the process. So anyway, as you...
Now it's based on a fairy tale. I'd like you to say the fairy tale because that's
yes, well that's what happens in the center. When you get to the center, you start to hear this audio of a fairy tale, and the fairy tale is the Frog Princess. What happens in that fairy tale, it's originally a Russian story, is the Tsar tells his sons to shoot arrows, and where their arrows land, they will marry the girl that finds their arrow. Well, the youngest son goes, and there he sees his arrow in the mouth of a frog, and he's horrified that he should have to marry a frog. Ick, you know. But actually, it turns out she's a very lovely lady inside. She has all these powers, and she's fabulous. So what was in the box that people came to see as they went on their pilgrimage was me, painted green as a big frog with an arrow in my mouth. And I was essentially being the personification of nature, just sitting there loving people. Also, there were 50 live frogs in this little cage with me, hopping around.
So you were really getting in touch with nature yourself.
Right, exactly. They were very sweet.
All right, well, let's take a look at this video of Leaps of Faith.
Ivan didn't know what to do, but the frog...
Frog convention or what? I haven't played leapfrog in such a long time. You know, I get it. It's leap year. Finally clicked in. You like it? Astonishing. Amazing. You like this? Oh, it's very interesting. Love it. Did you go through the whole thing? Yeah, we leaped all the way down. We did the work.
Yeah, you left today?
I left today?
Yeah,
And you
today's
said some
weekday.
jumping?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Well,
Now's the time.
I have seen this in
I know. Today, February 29th. Now, leave you. It only 29th. Yes, it only happens once every 4 years.
Okay, I'll get your bed. You can go in the center.
I thought it was great.
Oh, Sharon, that's great. Well, we've had This Is Our Body, we've had Revelations of the Flesh. What's coming up next for you?
Well, actually, I've got 2 projects that I've just finished. One is a performance called Virgin, which is about trying to have a baby without a man, which is something I'm trying to do in my life right now. And it's an interesting process. And I began to identify with the Virgin Mary for the first time in my life and what it must have been like for her. But also looking at the whole notion of virgin, that virgin as a Christian is sort of this weird thing. On the one hand, your friends are pressuring you not to be a virgin, and your parents are pressuring you to be a virgin, and all this stuff, all this good girl stuff. But in the goddess meaning of the word, the virgin goddesses were women unto themselves.
Right,
it means
an
independence and a freedom of choice. And I really think that many women are choosing to explore that alternative in their lives right now. So that's what that piece is about. And it looks at virgin birth from the angle of Christianity, mythology, cabbage patches, storks, getting babies from nature. I mean, there's so many primitive beliefs about women and nature and as a source of fertility.
So you're really taking a thread that really goes back to the goddess cultures and really goes through the Christian and matriarchal cultures to right now.
Right. The other project is a video that I just completed called Our Lady of LA, which I co-produced with Sue Mayberry and Kathleen Forrest. And it is a search for the goddess in the contemporary urban environment of Los Angeles, because actually Los Angeles was named after a goddess, the city of Our Lady, Queen of the Angels. So we interviewed a lot of different artists, poets, scholars about where they see the goddess in LA. And we also dramatized 6 different goddesses. Artists portrayed them. And so it was a lot of fun.
All right, let's take a look at that. We're going to see the beginning of this, and this is such a wonderful piece.
Thank you.
Let's look at this.
I'm one of those rare people who was born in L.A. I'm an Angelita, which I think is probably the basis of my understanding of the goddess to begin with. I mean, Los Angeles is the city of the angel, and obviously the angel was the goddess.
I don't think it's an accident that we're named after Mary in this city. And there must be that kind of energy here. There must have been this energy here when the first people came here, because those names don't just get chosen for nothing. So I think she's very strong here. I really feel her blue cloak, star-studded cloak sort of spread over us a lot.
Since not only is L.A. named after the goddess, but California is named after Califia, who was an African goddess.
If you ask me, where do you find a goddess, then I would say anywhere, everywhere. If you let other people to see it within yourself, or if you are willing to see it from other people, it's everywhere, especially on the street or people walking by. Those people, anybody who doesn't look so important, actually they are the goddess. That's what I truly believe.
When I'm very fortunate, I find the goddess everywhere.
For me, she's everywhere. She's really everything.
La ciudad de Nuestra Señora, la Reina de Los Ángeles, the city of Our Lady, Queen of the Angels. Where is the goddess in Los Angeles today? And in what form does she reveal herself?
Probably the goddess that I've experienced most profoundly in LA is Guan Yin, who's the Chinese bodhisattva of compassion. She's called Kanzeon in Japanese. And I experience her in the autumn. You know, those like few days each autumn when the wind blows and it's so clear and you drive along the coast and the water's sparkling and there's blue sky and clouds and everything's green and it's so beautiful and you remember why you live in LA. You know?
In our home, we had a series of grottos. One of them was to St. Anthony, another was to St. Jude. But the major grottos were to the Virgin of Guadalupe. And my grandmother always prayed to the Virgin. And in our local church, there was a big grotto of the Virgin of Guadalupe, who was the brown Madonna.
Also Mary, and I think that has a lot to do with, you know, the rich Hispanic traditions that there are here. But I experience her here, her presence really strongly, and I don't think Guanyin and Mary are so different in a lot of ways. So.
Yeah, Guanyin is the Buddhist bodhisattva of mercy and compassion, and her name roughly means the hearer, the one who hears the world's cries. The compassion of Guanyin, for me, is a vessel as big as the entire universe. I have a very deep and personal relationship with Guanyin, in that I chant to Guanyin every day. So what happens when I pray to Guanyin? There's nobody here but me. Maybe I'm Guanyin. Like I'm the manifestation of Guanyin. It gives me the opportunity to bring into the world Guanyin's compassion because it places it in my own hands.
Cheri, where can my audience see the rest of this piece here?
The videotape and the performance version will be performed this summer in July at the Church in Ocean Park.
Okay, great. And thank you so much for sharing your work. It's so powerful and healing.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. Good night.
In